Welcome, everyone. Welcome, and thank you so much for watching us. Today, we have a fascinating guest, and I am really excited to hear more about his story. We have today with us Todd Randall. Welcome, Todd. Thank you so much for being with me today.
Good morning, Diana. Thanks for having me.
Todd Randall was a vice president at a $300 billion healthcare technology company. He left and started over a half dozen small companies, including franchises, startups, acquisitions, consulting, and coaching. If he had a fancy title at one of the world's largest companies, a big paycheck, and was traveling the world, why did he leave that environment and risk everything he owned into a small business that couldn't hope to match his previous income? The answer will provide us with insights into happiness. Welcome, Todd. I am really excited to have you here, and I'm looking forward to hearing more about your story and your mission.
Thank you. Yeah, it's fun to tell the story, and I enjoy hearing your story too. It's an inspiration to me, so I think we'll find some things in common that'll be fun.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I would like to start with our first questions. What is your story actually? What happened? Why did you left something that many of us are dreaming to have? Being a vice president of a big company is something that I know many of our listeners are hoping and dreaming about, and you left. Why this? And what is your mission today?
It's the most fun story to tell because it was such a, like, you know how couples like to tell the story where they got engaged and how they knew they fell in love with each other. This is a story where I had a big revelation and it took years and years to come. So I enjoy telling it very much. I had a dream job. I really did. It was professionally the most satisfying post I'd ever had. And essentially I was working for a very large healthcare company, and they were branching into Europe. And I spoke a second language, and I was really interested in other cultures. And I had a clinical background and a business background. And so instead of sending a team, they sent me. And I couldn't be more proud of that, right? I got to interact with, you know, diplomats and presidents of our other divisions, et cetera. And I did lots of research. And I was really, really enjoying myself, right? And then at the end of the project, it was supposed to culminate in me starting a business over there. And because this was in 2007, when, you know, some of the financial anxieties started to, you know, bubble to the surface. And my company said, look, we think we'll wait. Why don't you come home? And that made me really sad. And so I took 3 weeks off. They knew that I was really struggling with coming home. And so they said, why don't you just take a little time off and come back and maybe start on May 1st. This was the date we had in mind. And so the whole month of April, I took off to Paris, a city which you know very well. And I just took language classes in the morning, and then I would go, you know, to the opera at night or golfing with friends or, you know, enjoying things. And it was a difficult month to find a place to stay because of all the tourists. And so I just stayed. The school offered me housing, right? And at the end of the 3 weeks, I did a math count where essentially I had spent a total of like $3,000 in those 3 weeks for a vacation in a foreign city, doing whatever I wanted, whenever I wanted, right? And I thought I was making a killing at this company. It was the most income I'd ever had. And like you said, I had a fancy title and lots of respect at that company. And I had more fun in those 3 weeks. I really did. And when I counted it up, I said, okay, so this was one of the best months of my life. And I spent a total of $3,000, right? And $3,000 is a lot of money for some people, but if you make it relative, right? To at the time, I was a very high income producer. And when I compared it against that, I did the math and I realized that I only need to make $36,000 a year to be blissfully happy. Right now, I had other ambitions in that. I wanted security, and I wanted to save for retirement, and I wanted to buy my girlfriend nice things, and, you know, like all of us do. But I realized at that time that my expectations were out of alignment with my happiness, and that was the big life changer for me.
Wow, thank you so much, Todd. Amazing. And this also reminds me of my own journey, actually. I grew up thinking that I always have to be the best, and I struggled and I made it happen. I passed competitions. I got into central banks and all of that. And I remember sitting in my office and thinking at some point, what am I doing with my life? What do I really have? How do I enjoy my journey and my purpose on this earth? And this really was also a shift for me. And as you mentioned, sometimes we reach this moment in time when we start wondering, is this enough? Does this make me happy? And my question for you, Todd, would be, what are the ingredients to live a happy life?
So that's an excellent question. For me, I wish that I was the type of person that could learn these things via a mentor or by reading a book or by watching a podcast, but I was not. Okay. We're all made from different claws. I needed to beat my head against the wall until it was bloody before I learned my lesson. And I've noticed this about myself in other ways, right? So for me, I couldn't reach that revelation until I had accomplished the goals that I'd set out for myself. That's just the way I was, right? And so it's hard for me to advise people on what the ingredients are for happiness because I was so blind to them until I'd reached my other goals, right? And so maybe the interesting part of this investigation is you and I may be helping people see them before, because not everybody gets so lucky as I was, and not everyone's so fortunate as you were, right? Somewhere along the way, there is a much better return on investment if you can realize that your sunk costs are not delivering you to where you really like to be in the end, right? How many times have we heard an interview with someone who's at the end of life and you ask them what's important to them and it's not the same things that it was to us in the 20s and 30s. So I feel hypocritical giving advice. However, for me, what it was is once I knew that I could do it, it just triggered an internal evaluation. Is that what I want? Right? Like a dog who catches a car, right? They chase, and then they get to it. And you can see it in their face. Like, now what? Like, I've got this car by the bumper. Is that what I really wanted? Or was it the journey? Was it the chase that was fun for me? And I realized that it was the journey for me. It was the growth. Now I already spoke French passably, right? But I was studying, and it inspired me. Like, it filled me, it satiated me in a way because I was studying something that I wanted to do, right? So I guess my chief complaints of working in a large company, even though I had it good, right? My chief complaints were a lack of autonomy and perhaps a lack of transparency, right? I didn't get to make the decisions. And who would expect me to make the decisions for a $300 billion company? But that's something that I aspired to do more of, right? And so maybe that's one of the ingredients is autonomy. That's what I try to do now, right? What my mission is with my clients and what my mission was with myself is I enjoyed being on someone else's bus when I got to choose the bus. Right? Oh, that bus is going to Paris. Let me get on it. Oh, that bus is going to an MBA. Let me get on that. Oh, that bus is going to multiculturalism. Let me get on that bus. But at some point, right, companies need something back from you and you can't always choose what bus you're on. And that was really frustrating to me. So I help people decide to drive their own bus again, right? That's my mission statement, is that I feel so comfortable. Like, for years, I made much less income than I did when I was at the big company. And I was, in fact, happier. It's funny how those there are times in life where you put your feet up and take a sip of a beer and you think to yourself, this is really great. Right. And I had way more of those in the year after I left corporate life than I did during corporate life. And it was so evident to me after the fact, but it wasn't while I was, when you're in it, it's kind of hard to see the forest through the trees. Are you familiar with that metaphor, with that saying?
No.
Yeah, we have an expression here that we say, it's hard to see the forest through the trees, because when you're in the forest, all you see are trees. And in front of you, people say, where are you? Well, there's a tree in front of me. And what you don't see, because you can't step back with a full perspective, is to know that you're in a forest versus a grove versus a backyard versus what have you.
Absolutely. This reminds me of the story of the fish who is asking another fish to, how can I reach the ocean? And the other fish says that you are already in the ocean. And the small fish says, no, I'm in the water, not in the ocean. And this is really what you are saying, is that
yes, exactly.
We don't see the big picture. We don't see where we are.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I think there is a point in a person's life where their objectives do change, right? And maybe the key is helping people evaluate those early. Because I was 40 when I left corporate. And I think that's a great age for people because my experience started to be cumulatively started to be a much bigger return to me than it was to somebody else, right? Like if I started a business, I could make an income for myself relatively easily with the skills that I had. Whereas to a corporation, I was one more person adding profit to their X percentage or, X NOI or what have you. And to them, it was valuable. Granted, to me, it was much more than that because it could get me money if that's what I wanted, but it could also grant me freedom. And it could also grant me autonomy. And it could also grant me, the setter of culture. This was another thing that I really enjoyed about doing my own thing is that I was on some teams where I really enjoyed the culture and I wanted to be part of it. And I couldn't wait to get up on stage with whatever their objectives were. And sometimes we were not in alignment and I didn't like the culture, but I didn't get to set the tone.
I see. I fully understand. And I believe that there is a conflict which happens in many people when they are in a career and they are not aligned with the culture of their business. Absolutely.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I am thinking, Todd, do you think that your experience and everything you went through and everything you learned in the company, in the corporate world, helped you feel like you are resourceful enough to build everything on your own, to build your businesses, and actually live the life that you want to live? And do you think that we can achieve that feeling of confidence, even if we don't go through all of these years of experience?
Yeah. Wow. What a question. I grappled with this. This was really a struggle for me. In my heart, I knew I was curious and I knew I was hardworking. And those are maybe the two most important ingredients to starting a company or just doing my own thing. But I did lack confidence. And I probably had all the skills I needed at least a decade earlier than when I left. And the last 10 years was just me building the confidence to say I could do it. Like, here's one thing. My last couple of years in the company, I was embarking on an adventure that very few people in the company had before. And so I went and got an MBA to learn some of the skills that could apply to that, right? And about halfway through the degree, I realized that this project was not moving forward. And so the MBA was moot. And I looked around me and I looked at a class of 50 other people who were very likely also not going to use those skills at their current employer, right? And it occurred to me then that we were just giving ourselves permission to change, right? We were granting ourselves permission with just that little dose of confidence to say, I can do something new. And when you were in small groups or you were talking to people privately, they all had aspirations that were greater than where they are. That's what drove them to get the degree, right? And I don't use my degree really. It's interesting information. It was, I enjoyed the people I met. I enjoyed the information. I'm a learner. I'm a student by nature, but there's nothing I learned in my MBA that's helping me run a small business per se.
I fully understand. And this reminds me actually of our education system, which unfortunately is not fit for purpose, I believe, anymore, that we are learning so many areas that ultimately we are not really using. But for me, from my experience, what helped me is to open my mind and to really start thinking logically. And although I'm not using today, for example, in the business environment, I'm not using my finance degree, I am still using the way of thinking and putting all the pieces together, which helps me.
That's fair. Yeah, I think I'll tell you who I love to hire because my expertise since leaving corporate is I started a handful of small businesses. And in all those cases, you could make a choice to stay in it and run it. Like you could open a laundromat and be a laundromateur for the rest of your life. And if that's your aspiration, God bless you, you should do that. That wasn't my aspiration. I was trying to run a business, in which case I wanted to open a business, learn how to do it, teach someone how to replace me, and try something else, right? And all of these folks were 10, 15, 20, 25 years younger than me, right? With less experience than me. And if they showed curiosity and a work ethic and an ability to be corrected, critiqued, et cetera, to take coaching per se, they could run those businesses better than I could. They could, right? And this was an important lesson for me because I didn't need to be, 40, and I didn't need a master's degree, and I didn't need to spend that much time in corporate to go do the thing. It just required the willingness to try, fail, try again, fail, try again, fail. And because I was offering them that environment, I was giving them an environment where they were free to try something and then call me up and said, guess what, Todd, I really screwed it up this time. And they knew that they could share that with me because we worked through it together. Like we had that relationship built up. They succeeded. They really did well. And that's what started my coaching practices. I realized that because of my failures and because of the fact that I tried it over and over again, and because I had really fantastic staff. I got lucky in a lot of ways, right? And they taught me so much that I realized that I was coming upon a method that was useful to someone who would be on the same path,
Wow, this is really inspiring. Thank you so much, Todd. And I am also learning a lot from you. And I know that nowadays we are afraid of making mistakes. And as you mentioned, of failing and trying again. And why do you think that some business owners are very successful? Some businesses really thrive at some point and others fail and people give up. What is happening there?
Yeah, there really is something to that stick-to-itiveness, as we say, the willingness to get up and try again. Great entrepreneurs do not lose enthusiasm from failure to failure, knowing full well that it just takes one or two businesses that succeed to make all the difference. And I think it's a matter of gamifying it. This is a popular term right now that people are throwing around. And I think until you live it, it's hard to fully grasp the value of the term, right? But it intellectualizes it. It makes it a little arm's length for you. If it's really personal, if you can lose everything, and if you focus on that, it's very hard to make a decision, right? Think about the last time you gave a good friend advice, right? Your advice was likely much braver than the ideas that they came up with because you're seeing it from the big picture. Right? Someone that's in an abusive relationship and they think, well, I'll be more careful when they're around. I will watch what I say. I will spend less time at home. And you're like, no, how about you exit the relationship? Right? Or, well, I'll live in a one-story house instead of quitting smoking. And you as the friend say, well, how about never smoking again? Right? It's a more radical solution, and because you're on the outside, it's just easier to see. Right?
Absolutely, absolutely. I fully agree with you. And I also believe that sometimes it takes having or doing some bold actions, so to speak, in order to really change. And you mentioned something that dreams change and that maybe at a certain point in time, we want something else. How do we deal with that? And how do we trust our intuition to really say that, okay, this is a new dream and I want to chase this new dream?
Yeah, this is a difficult question. I think, who I get advice from, who I really enjoy, his name is Tom Bilyeu. He runs a team called Impact Theory in the States, and he runs wonderful material. One of the things that he advises is that when you make a decision, to act with a sense of urgency, because people tend to procrastinate and their dreams change so many times. And what it does is it validates their delay. Right? Think about it. If you have a dream and you don't act on it, 6 months later, that dream is slightly changed. And instead of telling yourself, oh, that's normal, dreams change all the time and I need to refine my motion, it acts as a validation of, see, good thing I didn't make that decision because things have changed in the last 6 months. And if you act with a sense of urgency, what you do is you put yourself in the driver's seat of planning, refining, instead of waiting, because things change so frequently that you can wait yourself all the way to the grave. And there's no value in that, right? And it is this is a way to gamify. If you have a process and you separate yourself from it just enough where it's personal because you're passionate about it, but it's not so personal, right, that you're always afraid of losing everything, then it allows you to have a process to make more radical changes and act with a greater sense of urgency, knowing with confidence that you will in fact refine it frequently, right? And I think the knowledge of the knowledge that plans always change. Plans always change. And if you arm yourself with that knowledge, it allows you to act actively instead of passively, right? This is a good time to have mentorship, by the way.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree with you more. And
Yeah.
I really believe that when we are struggling and when we are under pressure and all the time under stress, we really need an outsider who is just putting it in front of us so that we can see it. Absolutely. And Todd, you are, if can say, the way you are speaking and everything you are teaching us today makes me think about leadership. And I believe that you are very much oriented towards leading your life and leading your business instead of following, as you mentioned at the very beginning. How can we become, as business owners, better leaders? And how can we incorporate this belief that we are leaders in our life and in our business?
I think leadership involves a couple things. The first thing that leadership requires, I think, is to set a cultural tone, right? And I think cultural tone does include, some of the soft skills like positivity in the workplace or inclusion, et cetera. But it also includes the kind of the infectious certainty that your team requires, right? Like the concept that we were just talking about, where a knowledge that things will in fact change and a confidence that you will change with them, adapt, et cetera, is something that experienced entrepreneurs can bring to the table and convey in a way that your staff really needs, right? And so when I coach, that's one of the things I try to really bring to the table is I see their plan and I try to inject them with a dose of certainty that they don't have yet, only for a lack of experience. It's not because it's not insincere at all. I really believe that they can. It's hard for them to believe they can because they just haven't had as many cycles as I've had, right? Like think about your grandparents when you would go to them with a problem as a child, and it was an emergency for you. It was a melodrama. Jack doesn't like me at school, or Mary doesn't want to be my girlfriend at 8 years old, right? And what did your grandparents say? Oh well, because they'd seen it 1,000 times, and they knew predictably that you would have your heart breaking again and again and again. And they knew predictably that you would find a way to adapt, and it would drive you towards your partner that you were meant to choose in the first place. And so your grandparents had a much different opinion of a breakup at 8 years old than you did when you were 8. And I think as a leader, that's one thing you need to bring to the table. You need to bring to the table a certain amount of confidence, like an infectious enthusiasm for the future that your staff can't quite grasp yet just because of less experience.
Absolutely. Thank you, Todd, so much. And for those of you listening to us, if you need a coach who is going to guide you to become a leader, then contact Todd, because he's there for you to support you. And I would like to close our interview, Todd, by asking you a question that has become part of my brand. So my brand is My Design Tomorrow, and the message I'm giving is that in order to design our life and to design our tomorrow, we need different things. We need different pieces of the puzzle that need to come together, whether it's emotional, whether it's spiritual, professional, also financial, relationships. All of these need to come together in order to really feel like we designed our life the way we want it. How does it look for you, Todd? What are the pieces of the puzzle? And you don't have to give me all the details if you don't want to.
I think about it all the time. Yeah, no, 10 years ago, I really set upon a plan that I wanted to travel more, because that was the thing that inspired me to exit in the first place. For me, it was finding the right partner. I was single at the time, and I found the right partner. So that's part of the solution. And then I want to travel and work in a way that I can learn something new and share it with someone. And so it really is that simple. I want to be learning new things and sharing it with someone and living healthily. And so for us, that means we want to spend more time in French and Spanish speaking countries. We want to ride horses, and we want to be studying some language at any given time, right? And what I hope to be doing during this is teaching or coaching, because that's what brings me the most satisfaction from a professional perspective. And I've, largely accomplished that already, but it's those refinements that make it so great and so
Absolutely.
satisfying, I guess.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Todd. Thank you for being with us today and for teaching us so many lessons. I could keep going because I know that you have a lot of experience and knowledge to share with us. I would like to ask you before we close our interview, who are you serving and how can people get in contact with you?
Who am I studying?
Serving. Who are you helping?
Who am I serving? Yeah, so two markets largely. I serve people who are on the fence about exiting, about doing their own thing. So I help people become self-employed. There are lots of ways to do that. You could franchise, you could do real estate, you could buy an existing business, you could start up, you could coach, you could consult. And I've done most of those things. And so I help people vet their options and have an exit plan, right? The other thing I do is there are a lot of coaches in the space that are pretty young right now. They're achieving lots of success, and I help them sustain their business model, right? Because there's going to be lots of up and downs especially in the online coaching space. And those coaches really struggle they have lots of clients. They're concerned about how to serve them and how to make a business out of it so that they can get what they achieve. What they thought they wanted is to lay by the pool and give people advice over Zoom, right? And that's not quite what online coaching is. And so how do I help them design their goals and then reach them in a way that's, viable and satisfying for them?
And how
to reach me. So yeah, I think Facebook and LinkedIn are the best tools for this kind of thing. Last name is Randall, Randall, and my Facebook page is Beachview Biz, BIZ.
Great. Thank you so much, Todd. And thank you for sharing all your knowledge today with us and for being today with me and answering all our questions.
I've learned a lot from you. Thanks for having me.
Thank you very much. And for those of you listening to us, stay connected because more is to come. Happiness, mindset in business, leadership, and marketing are all topics that we all need to be aware of, especially if we are business owners. Stay connected. More is to come.